Hey marketing leader, today I'd like to talk to you about making changes to your website. Things like, making a button a bit bigger, or increasing the spacing between sections, or adding an extra column to a pricing table. Any changes whatsoever, including navigation, page layout, etc., etc. And I have 7 things for you that you should keep in mind next time you decide to make that change, because you might not realize that those small innocent changes, such as changing the color of a button or adding a bit more space between elements, actually has some kind of knock-off effect on the entire website. Today, I'm bringing you those 7 things that you should consider each time you commit or think of making a change to your current website. Without further ado, let's dive into it. First thing, cost. And I know that you've already thought about it, but then I mean cost in terms of, yes, money, but also resources, man hours. It takes time and it costs money. So you better be sure that this change brings value to your business. And I know I keep talking about value, but isn't that the essence of investment, that you get value back from it? It really is. So there you go. Think about the cost and return on investment in regard to that change. That is really, really important. So I guess the question to follow up with, how do you measure the value of changing a button? Well, maybe because you struggle, that's your answer. And if you're really bent on measuring value of changing that button to a different color, different font or size, shape, whatever that is, put some yardsticks in place to use for measurement going forward. So how about you see clicks before and after? How about you do some kind of split test, or run a survey, or put another button next to it and see which one wins or get more clicks? So any kind of micro conversion tracking will help you make a decision whether that change to a button, spacing, pricing, like whatever contact page, any change that you have in mind. Have a look at the data, because data and numbers, they really don't lie, and they will help you make the healthiest decision going forward. Accessibility. This is a big one. It's a huge field in design overall, so I'm really not expecting you to be an expert on it. Just keep it in mind. When you think about adding extra component, extra column, extra image, or replacing image with a bigger one, like changing some kind of proportions or colors, in fact, like anything that's to do with disability, screen readers, and general experience when it comes to using your website, you will want to make sure it is the highest level possible. And unfortunately, many people choose to ignore it. But we live in a world where people use the internet in many, many different ways. They have different disabilities. They have different needs, preferences, anything at all. And preventing them from using your website as they choose to or need to is not fair. Think about it too. And if you are in doubt, again, this is complex matter. If you're in doubt, just talk to your agency, and I'm sure they will just advise you on the next step. On that note, there's also usability or user experience, as in, can you actually use it? Is it functional? Could that be an issue going forward in different scenarios, such as, screens or slower internet, or when you take edge use cases, the functionality breaks and your proposed change breaks? Again, this is complicated, and people have degrees in those fields in design because it's such a broad term and domain to explore that one cannot simply know it all. So again, if you think about the change, keep usability in mind. That's different to accessibility. Usability is also extremely important, and if you don't take care of it, you might directly decrease your chances to convert traffic or reach any website goal whatsoever. Now, speaking of conversions, that's another thing. Do you think the change that you're proposing will increase conversion rate or decrease conversion rate, or just don't have any effect at all, right? So we have 2 options out of 3, which are not ideal, and yet you are insisting on that change without any data to back it up, apart from your intuition. But I'm sorry, this is not really something that we can use to make an educated decision. So when it comes to conversions, tread lightly and use all the data at your disposal to make a choice and make a decision, because maybe it's not the shape of the button, maybe it's not the space between lines of text that's an issue, maybe it's the copy itself, maybe it's the background that the button sits on, or maybe just people lack the understanding of your brand and your services, your products. So there might be more to it than just a button, if that makes sense. Now, going into a bit more technical aspect of a website is built out of components. Well, I mean, hopefully that is how your website is built. And these components are probably, also I hope so, fingers crossed that that's your case, they are based on some kind of design system. And system is the key word. I don't mean just designs, I mean design system, which is a product of its own. Now, we want to make sure that those components have a reason to exist, and they need to have a proper purpose to them. They actually need to serve some kind of goal before they can see the daylight, which is, online traffic. And if you propose a change that is not included in the design system, then you really need to question yourself, will that change cause any conflicts, or will that change contribute to other parts of the website as well in a positive way? Or maybe you could substitute your idea with one of those existing components and save everyone's time, because there's high chance that buttons that are in the design system, they are already checked for accessibility, for usability, they've seen live traffic, you have data on how they perform, and maybe there's no need to reinvent the wheel, if I can say it that way. So keep those components and that structure of the website in mind. There's this global styling to your website that most elements that you see when you browse the website, the ones that you interact with, they inherit the looks, the functionality, and they sort of talk to each other. So if you tweak one part, everything else sort of has to follow. And that ripple effect is often avoided, well, not considered maybe, and it creates that money sink, because you change one thing and then you have this domino effect that you have to follow through and fix everything that is sort of knocked down. So there is that. Another one, that's a sixth thing to keep in mind, is assets. Assets, and I mean particularly images and videos, but there's also, PDFs, etc. But when we talk about web, we mainly mean images and videos because they are all over the place. And things for web are not the same as things for print, for example, or some kind of presentations. Digital assets are one of a kind in a way. They have their own extensions, file extensions, and I don't mean PNG, JPEGs. They've been around for ages, but there is, for example, web or webm for movies, and you have to keep specifics and intricacies of those files in mind, their weight, their scalability, their resolution, which I will talk about in a second, is one of the biggest points I have really, the next one, the last one. The way they behave on different types of networks is like there's so much to it that you can't just simply export an image that you found on the internet and slap it on a website. It just doesn't work that way. Same goes for, icons, and same goes for GIFs or GIFs. Depends on which camp you belong to. The pronunciation will differ. But the gist of what I'm saying is assets for web need special care, special attention. You need to optimize them, refactor them, convert them to a different extension. So you can't just approach someone that manages your website and say, use this, unless whatever that this is have already been through the process. So keep that in mind too. It takes time, it takes money, which circles back to the first point I mentioned. And the last one, my favorite, resolution, screen resolution. There is this ongoing trend, even though it's so obvious that we all use mobile devices. It's probably like 50-50 split of the web traffic that comes from mobile and desktop laptops. Yet the smaller screens are always ignored. I hate it because it creates this unnecessary friction on the website. It just destroys the experience. Therefore, please keep all these resolutions in mind when you're thinking about website change. How will that affect phones that are 320 pixels wide? What is going to look like on tablets that are 768 pixels, or just smaller laptops that have a screen wide as 1280 pixels? But also, what about shorter screens? When we watch our website recordings, there are people that have screens about 500 pixels tall. That's really small, and you have to consider all of that when proposing change to your website. So it's not enough for you to go to Figma, Miro, or PowerPoint, scribble something down and ask someone to just publish it as is. In fact, when the idea is bubbling in your head, first thing you should do is think about smaller screens, because it's so much easier to add new things as you scale the screen up instead of subtracting things as you go down. So that is very important, and I can't emphasize that enough. Keep mobiles, tablets, all sorts of screens. We live in an era where screens are really fluid. You can almost get a visit from any kind of resolution you can think of, from 300 pixels to 4K, and guess what? Your change needs to account for all of those screens. So there is that too. But of course, don't worry, I'm not here to just criticize and stir up any issues, and I want to propose a solution to all of that. And it's really just one solution that is probably a band-aid for all of those issues that I mentioned at the beginning of the video, or most part of this video. That is, start with the user. It's really that simple. So, okay, let's assume you just came to work and thought that the banner on the homepage is not up to your standards, or some kind of standards that you hold dear. Great, but that's your perspective. What about users' perspective? Do they find it engaging, funny, interesting? Does it help them understand the website a bit better? If yes, just don't bother. Just move on to your next thing on daily to-do list. And if you find out that people struggle with that banner, put all your resources into it, because you are right to do it. So instead of thinking about solutions that people may or may not like, start with people and ask them what they don't like, then think about solutions to fix those issues. It's the other way around, but it's so much more effective. But of course, I can't blame you if you want to use some kind of visual aid to propose a change, to send it over to your agency or design team. If you have one internally, that's okay. But just keep all those things in mind, all of them. Because if you start ticking those things off one by one, at some point you will realize, okay, that change is actually not important. It's just not worth it. We won't get anything out of it. And that's great. That's literally, that's all you need to realize. And if you go through the whole list and none of those issues seem relevant, seem powerful enough to prevent you from proceeding further, then that's also great, because now you have thought this through and you can guarantee the execution team and your stakeholders and anyone that you get involved with that this change will actually have impact. And impact is my favorite word. So I will leave you with it. Thanks so much for watching. And if there's anything else that comes to your mind, I hope you still like me after this video. I might have been a bit harsh, but it's really our daily thing that we keep fighting those requests off, because they might seem good on the lid, but on the inside they're a bit not really worth it. And I just want you to help out a bit with this video. So hopefully this was helpful. Thanks so much. I'll see you in the next video. Bye bye.